How do you build a warm home in a place where fire can't save you? The sun disappears for half the year, and the ground itself is frozen solid like concrete. Somewhere in the high Arctic, humans didn't just survive this environment, they engineered it. And what they built wasn't a house. It was something far more dangerous and far more precise. At -40 degrees Fahrenheit, the Arctic doesn't feel like a place.
It behaves like a system, precise, indifferent, and relentlessly efficient. A system engineered by nature to remove heat fast. Every exposed surface becomes a point of loss.
Every breath, every movement, every second, a countdown. But the true enemy isn't the cold itself, it's motion. When wind accelerates across a surface, it doesn't just pass by, it interacts. It tears away the microscopic boundary layer of warmth that clings to skin, clothing, and structure. This is forced convection, a thermodynamic process so aggressive,
it outpaces the body's ability to generate heat and overwhelms any primitive shelter trying to contain it. It behaves like a system, precise, indifferent, and relentlessly efficient.
It strips you. So the question was never how to stay warm. The real question was, how do you stop the loss before the system takes everything? In most environments, survival architecture follows a simple rule: build walls, burn fuel, maintain heat. It's a system based on continuous input energy flowing in to balance what is constantly lost. But in the high Arctic, that logic doesn't just weaken it, it collapses completely. There are no forests on the horizon, no timber to shape into beams. No wood to burn, no fire to rely on. Without fuel, heat cannot be sustained. Without structure, space cannot be enclosed. Every assumption that defines a home disappears, and what remains is exposure. A structure built on the surface becomes a liability.
A thin shell standing against an infinite heat sink. It absorbs nothing.
It stores nothing. It only loses. Energy bleeds outward, endlessly, into an environment that never returns it. This is not a place where you can generate warmth and expect it to last. This is a place where survival depends on something far more precise. The ability to trap energy so completely that escape becomes almost impossible. Instead of building upward, they made a quieter, more calculated move. They went down. Not deep underground, not completely hidden from the surface. Just 3 feet into the earth. At first glance, it feels insignificant.
A shallow adjustment in depth, barely worth noting.
But in the Arctic, that small shift changes everything. Above the surface, temperature is unstable. unpredictable.
A violent system that can plunge from survivable to lethal in a matter of hours.
-40, -50, even -60 overnight. The air is chaos.
But just below the active layer of soil, the physics begin to change.
The earth stabilizes. Temperature no longer swings wildly.
It settles, holding close to 32 degrees Fahrenheit, the freezing point of water.
It isn't comfortable. It isn't warm, but it is survivable. That narrow thermal margin, that fragile band between freezing and death, became the foundation of everything.
They didn't eliminate the cold. They stepped out of its volatility and into a zone where energy could finally be controlled. Modern buildings rely on insulation materials engineered to resist the flow of heat. Fiberglass, foam, layered barriers designed to slow the escape of energy. But insulation alone has a limitation. It doesn't store heat. It doesn't stabilize a system. It only dilates the inevitable. What these Arctic builders understood was something far more powerful: thermal mass.
The frozen ground permafrost was not an obstacle. It was a resource. A vast, silent reservoir of energy. It absorbs heat slowly, releases it slowly, and most critically, it resists rapid change. In a world defined by violent temperature swings, that resistance becomes everything. By embedding their structures into this dense mass, they created a thermal buffer, a barrier not just against cold, but against instability itself. The walls were no longer thin layers of protection. They became extensions of the earth. Massive, immovable, constant. Inside, temperature no longer mirrored the chaos above. It settled. It stabilized. It became something rare in the Arctic, predictable and ultimately controllable. Wind is destructive because it creates pressure. When high-speed air strikes a surface, it doesn't just pass by, it reorganizes itself. A high-pressure zone builds on the windward side,
while a low-pressure vacuum forms behind it. That imbalance becomes a force. It pulls, it extracts warm air from within the structure.
Through seams so small they can't be seen, through imperfections too subtle to detect. This is how heat truly disappears, not in dramatic bursts, but in silent, continuous loss. But what if the structure gives the wind nothing to grab onto? No vertical wall. No sharp edge, no surface to collide with. What if it doesn't rise above the landscape at all? The earth stabilizes. Temperature no longer swings wildly. Air didn't strike the structure. It adapted to it, flowing over the curved surface. Following its geometry, without resistance, without disruption. Smooth, silent.
The pressure differential vanished. The suction disappeared, and with it, the primary mechanism of heat loss.
The house didn't fight the storm. It became invisible to it. But solving heat and wind only exposed a deeper problem. How do you create space when the material that defines space, timber, doesn't exist? No beams, no planks, no straight lines to span a roof. In most of the world, Wood is structure. Here, it is absence. So the answer had to come from somewhere else. It came from the ocean. A single bowhead whale carries tens of tons of organic architecture. A skeleton evolved to endure crushing pressure, relentless force, and constant motion. Its bones are not random. They are engineered by nature. Long curved jawbones became natural arches, forms that don't resist weight, but redirect it. In structural physics, an arch transforms stress. Instead of bending and failing under load, it channels force outward into compression, making it one of the most stable shapes ever discovered. Arranged into a dome-like frame, these bones created a structure that could support immense weight. Layers of snow, earth, and time itself. The ribs formed a lattice. The shoulder blades sealed the gaps. Every element had purpose. Every curve had function. Nothing was wasted. This wasn't survival through improvisation. It was adaptation refined into engineering. Most materials fail in extreme cold. They lose flexibility. They become brittle. They fracture under stress. In sub-zero conditions, even strong materials begin to behave like glass. Unforgiving, unstable, prone to sudden failure. But one material defied that pattern: baleen, a biological composite, evolved not for construction, but for survival in the harshest ocean on Earth. Flexible when wet, resilient under constant strain, and when exposed to freezing temperatures. It transforms. It tightens. Instead of weakening, it reinforces itself. Instead of cracking, it holds. Used as lashings, baleen became the connective system of the structure, binding bone to bone with a tension that adapted to the environment itself. As temperatures dropped, the bindings contracted, locking the framework into greater stability. Under the weight of snow and shifting loads, the structure could flex just enough to absorb stress, then return to its original form without damage. This was not rigidity. It was controlled movement, a system designed not to resist force completely, but to survive it. By now, the structure had become nearly perfect. Heat was contained, wind was neutralized, energy loss was reduced to a minimum. From the outside, it seemed like the problem had been solved, but perfection revealed a new threat, one that couldn't be seen, only felt when it was too late: air. In a sealed environment, oxygen begins to fall. Carbon dioxide slowly rises with every breath. And more dangerously, carbon monoxide, colorless, odorless, builds silently from the burning oil lamps that provide the only source of heat and light. A structure designed to preserve life had also created the conditions for suffocation. To survive their own design, they had to master something even more complex than heat: airflow. Ventilation was not random, it was engineered.